Well, for more insights on the developing situation in Somalia, I'm now joined by Abdullahi Boru Halakhe, who's an Africa security and policy analyst who understands the Horn of Africa politics well. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Good to talk to you again.
My pleasure, Peter.
All right, so isn't the president of Somalia causing a constitutional crisis?
Yes, indeed. So the president's term was supposed to end in last year, but there was an agreement that was signed by all the parties involved for the term to be extended so that they can have an election in February. That election has not taken place. The president is again saying that there hasn't been clear agreement between the federal government and 5 regional governments, so he will continue being in power against the constitution. However, I just want to add that all the 2 other presidents before him, who are now in the opposition, their terms were extended. I just want for the viewers also just to highlight how elections are held in Somalia. The elections, the Council of Elders indirectly elect members to the lower house, and the 5 regional government elect members to the upper house. The upper house and the lower house together elects a president, and then the president appoints a prime minister. A prime minister will form the cabinet. So it's not one that is one man or woman vote, but it is done indirectly. And that is where the problem lies as of now.
All right. So we have also a situation where only the lower house voted for his extension. The upper house didn't, which suggests that this law can't be passed.
In an ideal situation, yes, that the both houses have to pass for the law to become law. But what we have right now is a country where there isn't there is very little to separate between the opposition and the incumbent. And that is what makes it incredibly difficult. The international community knew that we will hit this point. The president has had 4 years to organize an election, one man, one vote. He dragged his feet until the last minute. He agreed with the regional government to extend his term temporarily so that electoral commission would be put in place for an election to be conducted. Guess what? That has not happened. And he knows what he is doing, and that will precipitate much more problem. If you are an external actor that has been supporting Somalia for the last decade or so, what would you do? If you pull the plug, you will make the country to descend into a country that is already fragile to further disintegrate. So that is where the problem is. And I want also, like your reporter highlighted at the top, when President Mohamed Abdullahi came into power 4 years ago, in a country that is riven with tremendous amount of division, he came into power on the crest of tremendous amount of goodwill, domestically in Somalia, in the region, and Somalis who are living in the diaspora. Right now, I don't think there is anything like that, and that doesn't bode well for the near and long-term future of Somalia.
So who was the problem in terms of getting the elections organized and signed off? Who was the biggest stumbling block? A lot of people are saying it's President Farmajo himself.
For sure he is. They had 4 years. Last election was held indirectly, like I explained to you earlier. This election, ideally, which was meant to be held last year, was meant to be done one man, one vote. When the election cycle came around, the federal government was not prepared at all. And I just want to add a little bit of dimension as well, is that even within the country, within the neighboring countries, there is a fair degree of interest in Somalia's election. Kenya and Somalia right now do not enjoy tremendous amount of relationship. A few years ago, when elections were held in one region where the Kenyan military are based now, Kenya supported the incumbent president of the Jubaland region, and Ethiopia supported a candidate that was backed by the federal government that was supported by current President Farmajo. So that is the regional dynamic at play. For other actors, you have Qatar and Turkey who are supporting the current president. So it is not just that Farmajo is fairly strong, that he's taking such an arbitrary extra constitutional steps. He knows that he's going to be backed. What would the international community do? You know, the United States have issued a statement, the EU has issued a statement, and their statement amount to saying we will take stern measures. What would those stern measures amount to? Either, you know, visa restriction, sanctions. What would be the end? You know, that's the question that you have to ask. You know, you impose a sanction expecting that you will change the behavior of a particular actor. Farmajo is close to losing nothing.
All right, so I'm busy trying to work this out because in and amongst all of this, all these discussions, actually Al-Shabaab don't care what this government is doing, trying to do or not. They carry on with their path, and much of it is destruction and instability. So does it even matter what Mogadishu does?
For Al-Shabaab, it doesn't matter what Mogadishu does. It doesn't matter what the regional countries does. It doesn't matter what the international community does. Al-Shabaab has clearly said, we are going to establish a country based on Islamic law. All foreign troops should leave. Anything short of that to Al-Shabaab amounts to nothing. And so therefore, you have to do your calculation. If you're sitting in Addis, the AU chambers, if you're sitting at State Department here in the United States, if you're sitting in Brussels, what would you do? So it is a very difficult question. And in all these scales, the one actor that is going to have a free reign is Al-Shabaab. They will just say, look, we wanted to establish Islamic law, and others opposed us and said they wanted democracy, and democracy is not working. Just give us a chance because we are the only people who can do that. And that makes it incredibly difficult to govern a country called Somalia.
So what might be the consequences of what President Farmajo has done in signing this law into being? The people surely are not going to put up with this. They've lost faith. They gave him time and they gave him some goodwill, but it can only go so far.
That's the problem. You know, an average Somali has lived through, since 1991, they have lived through the Cold War, Al-Shabaab, they have lived through warlords, they have lived through, you know, fragile governments, all in the hope that they will have a peaceful country. An average Somali is extremely exhausted, and all he wants is to be able to live in peace, be able to bring food to the table for his family. And that is what the venal political elite in Somalia have denied that. It's very easy to put all this on the doorstep of Farmajo. But what has other political leaders done in Somalia? Where is one political leader in Somalia who can stand up today? And if he speaks, he has a fair degree of legitimacy that an average Somali will see him representing him or her. Very few of these guys have got any legitimacy with Somalis. The two other candidates who are going against Farmajo were presidents, and some of the things that they engaged in were incredibly egregious. Some including selling properties of the Somali government abroad. So it's very difficult for an average Somali who is at a completely breaking point at this point.
All right, so if we agree that Somalia has been in a chaotic situation for a few decades now, what needs to happen to get Somalia back to what it can be? A democracy, enjoying peace, or at least so together that they can deal with the real problem, which is Al-Shabaab?
Peter, that is the $1 million question. But I think the most important step right now is for the Somalis to have this election, you know, and agree on a concrete timeline with deliverables between now and, let's say, a few months, and hold this election, one man, one vote. and then the person that the Somalis elect to lead them. Because what is happening is that all the other problems, the hopes and fears and dreams of Somalis are now being held hostage to this process that is called an election. This process has to be done, not just to be done as a box-ticking exercise, but should be done as a substantive process towards enriching the fragile state that we have and ensuring that there will be democracy in one shape or form. Right now, that is not happening. We miss this window. As narrow as it is, as fragile as it is, I think we will be opening up a door for much more misery to be visited on an average Somali.
Abdullahi Boru Halakhe, we're going to have to leave it there. As always, thanks very much indeed for your insights on this very complicated situation. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Peter.
All right, that's Africa Security and Policy Analyst Abdullahi Boru Halakhe giving us some insights on this unfolding situation in Somalia.